Sethu, welcome to Talk Satellite.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A lot of experience in the ReOrbit team. Can you provide background on them and the company?
Yes, so I'll start with me. I'm Sethu, originally from India. I've been living in Sweden for like 13 years now. I've done a PhD and a postdoc, both working on different aspects of space, primarily the space avionics. After that, spending about 8-9 years in the academic setup, I was very interested in the so-called dark side, the business and sales. And I was offered a position from AEC Clydespace, which is one of the biggest CubeSat manufacturers. So I was taking care of their small satellite avionics. And when I started selling things, it was like a big punch on my face because I was, throughout my academic career, I was looking at very advanced, sophisticated architectures. And when I got into the reality, I all of a sudden realized like space was still stuck in the Apollo way of doing things. And the more I started selling things, the more I started talking with customers. It sort of reached to a point where space has two facets. On one side, space as a community is moving very fast in terms of the ambitions and visions, whereas space as a technology is still stagnated like 60 years ago. And that was always bothering me. And then like over a period of time, I just realized like this is a market that we have to address. And that's how ReOrbit came into existence. And when I started ReOrbit, I clearly had like we were after the mindset rather than actually the technology in itself, because space, the way the technology is this way today is because of the mindset of the space. So I was very clear that I need to have a great team so that we could start advocating on a different way of doing things. We've been fairly successful. So we got our CTO, Ignacio, who used to be the VP of engineering. He was the first space guy at ISI, and he sort of oversaw the enormous growth of ISI until he joined ReOrbit. We also have Carlos, who's VP of our engineering. So he used to be the chief systems engineer at INVAP, building big satellites. He's been taking care of 400-500 odd engineers. We also now ramping up our advisory team with former Director General of European Space Agency, John Dordain, joining us. And also the former VP of Connectivity from Airbus, Hughes, also joining our advisory board. Apart from that, I also strongly believe that we need to have like second set of leadership as well. So that's something I've been also focusing. So we also got really quite dynamic people coming in from ISRO, ESA, GOM Space, and others who fairly bring a lot of dynamism.
How about funding and backing for the company?
We had a pre-seed round 2 years ago, and interestingly, we were also like trying to change the course of how a typical space company was acting until we started. If you look at every space company in the last 10 years, they sort of follow a template where you start up, you go to the institutions, you go to the ESA, you go to your local governments, apply for grants, apply for money, get that, and then base ESA as a customer and sort of develop your technology. And that we saw as a big problem, because the reason why space is not moving dynamically forward is because of the pricing of a satellite, pricing of the launch. And that's mainly because companies start with government as a customer so that they don't have a proper product market fit with that. And that's what we wanted to break. So we said like we will not go the governmental way, but we will go the customer way. So when we closed our pre-seed round 2 years ago, when I was just there, no one else on the company. So we started talking with potential customers, and we've been fairly successful in ramping up our commercial activity. So today we already have contracts worth 30 million euros, and last financial year we got about 800k euros in revenues. In this year, already in this 4 months, we got close to 900k euros in revenues. We have a contract of about 7 million euros for this year. A lot of our development has been channeled through customers, which is good because one, we get to sort of work for the exact requirements. So we are finding a good product market fit, but also on the other hand, it's the best that you don't dilute yourself and you sort of develop on top of the customer's money. But also we are now actually opening up our seed round because we are seeing a big problem within ReOrbit, which is that there are a lot of customers coming and asking us to build. So we're actually getting overboarded with a lot of inquiries. It's a good problem to have. So we see that we need to also ramp up our sort of operation. So we are actually going for a next round. We are in the middle of the round now.
ReOrbit bringing technology together that will enable single-use satellites to become reusable.
Yes. So as said like earlier, when I sort of started selling things, I had like this big shock, primarily because every satellite that's built today is built on the basis of hardware first approach, and that is sort of pushing all the manufacturers to be married to a particular vendor. So today you take any satellite manufacturing company or an operator, they are sort of married to a particular architecture, and then it's very difficult for them to break away from there because of this hardware dependencies. And that's what we are trying to change by bringing software at the core. The way we build our satellites is exactly opposite to how a typical satellite is built, where we have our software, which is the standard between every single satellite, and we treat hardware as a commodity. And then when the customer comes in, given that today the space supply chain is very well established, we just go to the market, buy the space hardware as anyone buys apples or oranges, put them together, glue them together using our software. And that's where once we started building this, we also realized actually we were sitting on a bigger gold mine, meaning that once we have a software as a core architecture base, then we could start building libraries on top of the software, which would enable different functionalities. And that's when the reusability part actually came into existence. So today we are having like 3 default libraries on board our platform. Every single platform we build, it can connect with another platform. Every single platform we build can go talk with another platform. Every single platform we build is very highly autonomous. So once you have these inbuilt in the platform, instead of now having this rigid functionalness where you tend to push everything into one metallic piece of box, and when something happens to this box, a small component breaks, you're just dumping it away, regardless of 95% of the satellite still being functional. Rather than that, now once you have the ability to build a much more distributed systems because of these functionalities, you could start doing a salami slicing of your functions and then build a flock of satellites in space, each representing a certain functionality, but then as a collective they represent a certain operational functionality. So thereby, now if something happens to one of these entities, you're not dumping the whole service, rather you're just dumping the small functional entity, and then you just relaunch that. It connects to the flock and it's still operating. So in a way, you are reusing your space assets in a much more efficient manner.
Where are you at in terms of design and bringing ReOrbit into market?
Yeah, so as I said, we are developing a lot of our technology on top of the commercial contracts that we have. So today we are working on a MEO constellation mission for Warp Space. It's a Japanese company. We'll be building 3 satellites in MEO, and we have already done the PDR last year. We are very close to the CDR, which will happen in a month and a half now. We already placed the long lead items, orders on long lead items. So we are ramping up our manufacturing facility as well. Simultaneously, our software is already, we have like our software has been tested on the flight engineering hardware now, and that's where in terms of our development, and we'll be launching 2 missions next year. One for the Endurosat, who's buying our software, so they are a customer on the software side. That will be launched somewhere in Q2 next year, and then the Warp Space constellation would be launched Q4 next year.
What's your take on the current satellite market and its requirements?
As I said, today the satellite market is still stuck in the Apollo program. It's contradicting with the ambitions of space. I would say there's a big misconception in space today that cost is equal to reliability, heritage is equal to reliability, and that's what we are trying to break. That it's not about being expensive. It's not about having thousands of satellites that you have already flown. It's actually about utilizing technologies that are already existing on Earth, which is what we are doing in a much more innovative manner, so that you could start building both cost-efficient solutions, but also that are reliable. And that's what the market is missing, because we cannot go to $1 trillion space economy in the next 15 years unless you don't reduce the cost of building infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, our customers, who's ultimately serving the end users, have to come up with a cost-efficient solutions that make sense for them. And that cannot happen unless us as an infrastructure provider drastically reduce the cost and build much more cost-efficient solutions. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. In a way, what ReOrbit is doing is that we want to become a key to unlock new markets within space that are not possible today with the current way of doing space.
Thoughts on space law and policy?
That's a very tricky thing, because space as such has been, so far at least in the last, until the last 5-10 years, has been in the hands of the traditional governmental or the big primes, ultimately ending up to selling to the governmental customers. And also there is a big geopolitical things going on there as well. As such, space hasn't sort of consolidated as the other sectors in terms of policy making. But I think now with all the talk about the debris, I think that's sort of bringing the space community together, and there are already different forums where people are trying to sort of collect like-minded companies into one entity so that they could become the voice. For instance, we have Converse now, which is pushing the boundaries and policy making on the in-orbit economy side of things, and there are similar other other consortia. So I think the things are happening, but still, like in any governmental related matters, things will move slow. But I guess there is a positive optimism I see in that.
Seth, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.